In the faculty spotlight today is Rene Montemayor. Mr. Montemayor, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Doing well, likewise.
I see you around. Now I get to finally know who you actually are.
Yeah.
And you're a department chair, and I won't mention the department because I knew it as another name. So what is the department?
The name, starting 2 years ago, the name is English Languages and Cultural Studies.
Okay. And you are a department chair and you still teach, correct?
And I still teach.
Okay, so-
mostly online since I'm busy with meetings and
Yeah.
so on and so forth, yes.
As a department chair, what does that entail?
Oh my, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
They should call us firefighters because we're always putting out fires.
And that's why you do online classes. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're
There's always
putting out those
something.
fires.
There's meetings, there's trainings, there's conferences, I travel. So that's why I only teach online. That way it gives me the flexibility. Time-wise, it gives me the flexibility to do both jobs.
Right.
You know. So
And as a department chair, how many people do you oversee?
full-timers, we have 10 faculty members, 1 department secretary, and wow, about 40 dual instructors
Really?
throughout Laredo ISD, United ISD, and Zapata.
Goodness gracious, that is a lot of work.
Yes.
And do you still teach every semester, or do you maybe
Yes,
skip one or two?
I try to teach at least one class because now we have the 8-week system,
Right.
fall and spring. So I try to teach at least one class every 8 weeks, and then like one main master. In other words, I want
Yeah.
consistency. I don't want to lose how it feels to teach, and how to work with students, help students, provide help with students. So
And things change so quickly that if you miss an 8-week or 2 8 weeks, you
yes,
just,
exactly. And then there's a lot of changes right now.
Sure.
Post-COVID was one huge change. Going to 8 weeks was one huge change.
Right.
The AI revolution, I call it, is.
I love talking about AI, but it's really at the point where we have not seen what it can actually do.
Oh, we're barely starting.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as scary, or you can look at it as advantageous, depending on
The way I see it is, as the more you learn and you practice using it, the friendlier it may seem, not scary.
Yeah. Let's talk about how long you've been at Laredo College. How long have you been here?
On and off, 28 years.
28 years.
This last stint as a full-time instructor or faculty member, 22 years.
What about your teaching journey? When did that get started?
Fall of 1997.
Okay.
28 years ago,
Wow.
basically. Yeah.
So when you started teaching at the college level.
I started I started here as an adjunct instructor,
Okay.
teaching ESL and developmental English because I only had a bachelor's degree at that point. And then I started help at TAMIU. I was working with international students who needed English.
Yeah.
And then little by little, and then more and more, I started getting a lot of classes here at the college.
Yeah.
So I did 3 years full-time at TAMIU. I did a short stint at LISD at Martin High School. I had a supervising position. From there, I was accepted to a doctoral program in San Antonio at UTSA.
Okay.
Ended up teaching there for about a year.
Okay.
But then came back, family situations, came back to Laredo. And since then, I've kept my full-time status here at Laredo College.
Did you want to be a teacher?
Up until I was about 30, I did not. That was the last. If I had a list of priorities, it was the last one at the bottom.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm a little interested as to what happened those first 30 years.
I was obsessed with music. I used to be a professional drummer. I did that for about 12 years.
Very cool.
Oh, yes, sir. Very
Locally,
cool.
or you would travel? Or?
Mostly local. We did some travel.
Okay.
Towards the end, I ended up, I guess, rehearsing with Pira Studio after he left Salina.
Okay.
And but by then I was already married with 2 kids. It got complicated. The business side of music is not as nice as as most of us think it is. And at that point I said, you know what, I'm going back to school. I can help a lot more people as a college professor. And here we are.
Being a musician, especially at that level, you're a professional musician, but it's not family friendly. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of time. It's not a lot of pay. A lot of times.
The nocturnal lifestyle is hugely different.
Yeah, but you spent some good time in music, though.
That's my original passion is music.
Where did that love come from?
That's a very good question. My parents loved to dance.
Yeah.
They listened to Glenn Miller, Mambo's Perez Prado, and then even Elvis Presley, the Beatles. So that's a good thing about being bicultural here on the border. For generations, we not only do we speak Spanglish or a version of English versus Spanish, but the music, the food, Everything's a hybrid.
And it's different now because back then we were, our generations past, they were introduced to the both types of music, both cultures. Now through the internet, children and teenagers, whatever, they're exposed to music from all over the world. But back then, it was unique to be able to have that bicultural taste of music.
A little bit of country.
So when did you first pick up an instrument? So none of your parents didn't play anything then. They just loved music.
My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, had his own orchestra back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s.
Wow.
And very well known.
Okay.
Here in Laredo. Yeah.
So when did you pick up? Well, let me ask you on that though. What was he with a band? Was he with orchestra?
When I was a kid at Farias Elementary School, by the way, I would always be banging and my version of drumming on desks and stuff like that, and would get into trouble with my teachers.
I appreciate
So I started picking up drumsticks, and I noticed I had a talent. Not only rhythm but technique. Without any practice, it kept natural to me. So I started looking. By the time I got to sixth grade, because before I got into loving and having a passion towards music and drumming, I was hugely involved in Little League Baseball. I did that for about 4 years, and I kept practicing through my high school years, even though I was a drummer in the.
So you were actually playing baseball.
I was actually playing baseball as a kid,
and mixed bag of interests there.
Yes. Yeah.
So you were playing baseball. So did that banging on everything everywhere, that was really your first taste? And do you think you got it from your grandfather, or it was just something you just picked up?
You know what? That's a very good question. I just know that it was instinct, or it seemed to be instinct, because I didn't do any real practicing until much later, once I got to the Christian Middle School Band and then La Banda El Ánimo at Martin High School. So yeah, and we did a lot. Back then, Roberto Botella was the band director, and we did a lot of we did like tours within the high school band. We were all over Texas, we were all over Mexico. So when I got a taste of that, I was like, I need to do this professionally.
Yeah.
And that's when I made the transition, and I joined my brother-in-law's band. A lot of people in Laredo knows it as Brown Power.
Oh, yeah.
And then we changed it to the Power Band when we started recording CDs and stuff.
And that was sort of Tejano music, or what was it?
The music being recorded was musically Tejano, some cumbias, some ballads and stuff like that. But live, dude, we would start off gigs with Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, a little bit of Led Zeppelin and stuff like that.
Did Motley Crue come to Laredo?
Yes.
They did, right? To the old Civic Center.
The old Civic Center.
Did you go see that show?
I couldn't. I was busy rehearsing or something.
I got it.
Yeah.
What kind of music did your grandfather play, you said?
It was like, it was that generation's version of Orquesta Tejana.
Oh, wow.
Like horns and...
You said he was well known. Any names you want to mention?
La Orquesta Típica de Laredo was the name.
So somebody...
Luciano Duarte and him were working together a lot.
You said Luciano Duarte, and I know exactly.
They were partners, yeah.
Wow, that is so interesting. That's why I love these interviews, because we have staff, we have students that have history, and it's just amazing. I love this story.
Well, you know what? The senior Compian, the professor we had here in music, Compian, his dad played with my grandfather in that orchestra.
Do you have a lot of memories from that time? Is there a lot of documented memories? Pictures?
I did get a chance. I was doing this project when I was a graduate student, and my grandfather was over in his 90s, but he would still kind of tickle the mandolin. And I got a chance to interview him, and I have him somewhere in my garage. I have it in a VHS. I need to digitize it.
Well, you need to pull that out.
Yes.
This is your sign. You need to get that out.
Correct.
This is a fascinating story. So you were playing baseball, you were messing with the drums, and then what happened?
Well, I go from baseball to being a drummer. Loved it in high school, as I said. We even did some tours.
Did you do the three drums? Or which one?
The technique one is the snare drum.
Okay.
And now, of course, I also was on the stage band, so that's where I started doing the drum set.
Okay.
By the time I was my senior years, that's when I joined Brown Power.
Nice.
And we started making money, locally at the local level. And then we started talking about, hey, we should do some recordings and let's see what happens.
Were you still in high school, or were you...
When we started talking about recordings, I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
I was still in La Banda El Ánimo. So I was doing 2 rehearsals per day.
Wow. But you got that taste of money, and that sort of guided you.
When I saw that you could do some money, just being a musician, that caught my attention.
It's crazy that we're here talking about you being a professor and a department chair, but your journey started out as a musician.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And a lot of those stories and a lot of those, I guess, things that I learned through my history and my experience, I bring it into the classroom. And it makes some very interesting stories.
Yeah. So you were with the power band for how long?
12 years.
12 years.
Mostly, yeah.
Did you take it when you were in high school? Had you considered college? Did you take any college courses, or were you simply focused on the music?
In fact, that made my senior year very, very difficult because it was either, but my brother's a Vietnam veteran. So I had three different options: either join the Army band, under his, I guess, guidance, go to the University of Texas at Austin, because I had been jamming out with some of the drummers at UT Austin.
Oh, wow.
Or stay in Laredo and let's see what happens with the power band. So I chose, since I was young enough, it was a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
But I felt I was young enough to gamble. So I said, you know what, I'm going to stick in Laredo, let's see what happens with the power band.
Do you regret that decision?
Not at all.
Good.
Yes, I got a nice chance to express my passion in music and culture.
Sure. And so you did that for 12 years.
Yes, sir.
And then what happened?
Well, at that point, Peter Studio was thinking about kind of doing his own, still under Quintanilla Productions and doing his own band. And he's from Laredo. Right. So he and I were already friends. In fact, he was going to join Power Band before he joined Selena. And then he left on the road. He and Joe Ojeda left Laredo with Selena. So that ended the negotiations.
Yeah. Went well for them too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, very well. Very well. Yeah. And so at that point, he starts getting popular through Selena's band, and then enough popularity, and as a songwriter as well, he starts his own band. He gives me a call. I said, hey, Rene, remember when we hooked up with the power band? I said, yeah. Well, we might end up hooking up, but in my band, I said, what? Are you kidding me? I said, let's do it. So we started rehearsing in Corpus Christi at Selena's studio. But then that's when I was already 29 at that point, married, 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I guess the dad instinct kicked in, and I was like, you know what, I need a job with more consistency, a retirement plan, medical benefits, all that stuff. And I saw myself as a college professor at that point.
Why?
I noticed, have you ever noticed like Native American, the Native American aspect of our culture? The wise older people are always the storytellers. Yeah. That's what I saw in myself as I was getting older at that point already. And I said, I think that talent, even though my passion is still in music, that live on stage adrenaline that kicks in, I think I'm the storyteller.
But did you want to tell stories about music, or it didn't matter?
The overall culture.
Just everything.
Why we eat menudo, why we listen to mariachi and Led Zeppelin, why we speak Spanglish, that our entire culture is a hybrid one. Yeah. And a lot of people see it as a negative. And I said, you know what? Our culture is so rich, it's not a negative. Yeah. It's not inferior. I'm not saying we're superior. Right. But it's deep and it's rich, and I need to, educate our community through it, and knows there's no better way than at the college level.
How hard was it to let the music go? At least professionally.
It's still hard. Because I haven't done it in I've been teaching 28 years, so I haven't done it in about 34 years.
But you still play?
At my house, sometimes. My nephew has my drums in Austin. Okay. He's using them.
He took them from you, huh? Okay, so you pretty much have stayed away since then.
Yeah, I do keep up with a little bit what's going on in the industry. Reggaeton really took over though. Yeah. Because I was usually classic rock, Tejano, stuff like that. Like I love Los Lonely Boys, Grupo Maná have done. Right. In other words, behind the scenes, I try and keep up with the music scene as much as I can.
And did you cut ties with the industry from one day to the next? How did you take that next step to become?
It was very difficult, so I had to stay away physically as much as I could. So I delve into book readings, going to conferences, going to lecture series. UT Austin has the most awesome Latin American collection library. So I spent a lot of time there, especially when I was at UTSA. And I was like a sponge. Like I was digesting all this information. Americo Paredes, Crystal City walkouts, what was happening in California with Cesar Chavez. Man, that created a different type of, not like music, but it did create a different type of passion, but still a passion.
How did you jump in? Did you start taking classes? Where did you start taking classes?
Immediately, in fall of '93, I'm still rehearsing in Corpus Christi at Selena Studio with Peter Studio Band. But I'm already informing myself here at TAMIU, and even UT Austin a little bit, because eventually my goal was to graduate with a graduate degree at UT Austin. That never happened,
Right.
but that was my initial goal.
So you got a degree from TAMIU?
And then that January, I started classes when TAMIU was still at Laredo College campus.
Oh, goodness.
And then that next year is when the new TAMIU campus opened. That's already 95?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
94, 95, yeah.
And then from there you went to UTSA?
I earned a bachelor's degree, start teaching. It's because one of my linguistics professor, Katie Pletze Garcia, with whom I learned a lot, she recommended, hey, you would be an excellent teacher. I was like, me teach? I said, you're kidding, Prof. And she's like, no, I'm serious. We can get you started here with the for international students here at TAMIU. I said, but you know what? I'll give it a try. And you know what? I loved it.
Wow.
And then I started adjuncting here at Laredo College. I loved it even more.
But up until that point, what were you taking classes for if it wasn't to teach?
Master's. Because, in other words, to teach college level courses, you need at least a master's degree.
Okay.
So I started doing it part-time as an adjunct with only a bachelor's degree. So I wasn't teaching college level classes. I was teaching developmental, ESL students, anything for international students and stuff like that. As soon as my master's kicked in, that's when I got the full-time gig at TAMIU.
So
Did that for 3
you
years.
taught at the high school level then?
No,
No, never.
no. 1 year as a supervising position at Martin High School.
So you were never in the classroom?
Not in the high schools, no.
No. Huh.
Although I did teach years later this is pre-COVID, I did teach dual English and Spanish and speech at some of the local high schools. I think I did Alexander, Martin High School, and St. Aug.
What do you teach now? I never asked you that.
The class that I teach the most is English 2351, which is Mexican American literature. I call it Chicano literature. It's more accurate. But I also teach Spanish.
Okay.
I teach any of the compositions.
Which was your favorite?
This one.
Okay.
Yeah, it allows me to really educate and help and guide.
And that's where you draw on your past as a musician and your experience with the culture.
Yeah, because ever since I was in La Banda del Ánimo at Martin High School, all the music we played was Latin based. La Negra, Guadalajara. That's what we did. It was a huge hit.
Yeah.
We played at Dallas Cowboy football games.
Nice.
With piñatas and a huge performance and,
Back when it wasn't necessarily that cool.
We were the only ones doing it.
Yeah. What's your teaching style like?
Oh. Well, step one is to make the students feel comfortable. Tell
How do you do that online?
It's different. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I try to start with a short video. They see how I speak, the type of language, the type of terminology I use, the topics that I use, that I focus on, things like that.
The English 2351, you said, right?
Correct.
Who needs to take that course? Like, what kind of a student will?
It's a literature class, so any degree that requires a cultural literature philosophy type of a class.
Okay.
It's usually if you're looking at it from the English class perspective, you start with Comp 1, right, 1301, Comp 2, 1302, and then you take your literature if your degree asks for it.
Okay.
Or people who are just interested in learning about our people, our ancestors.
So 1301 and 1302 are required. Those are core classes?
Most four-year degrees require those two classes.
Talk about when you first started teaching versus now. What's changed?
I've gained a lot of weight and I lost
Join the club.
hair length. Back in the day, back in the late 70s, early 80s, I had long hair, earring, stuff like. Even when I started teaching, I had long hair, much thinner, and I would play a little bit of a joke with my students because I would walk in early, sit down as if I was a student, and then they started walking in, and I would start asking, "Hey, do any of you know who the instructor is?" And And everybody was like, no, we don't know. And then it's already time to teach a class. I stand up and start teaching the class. Everybody starts all puzzled. But then I started looking older. I was that wasn't working anymore.
Talk about Laredo College. What's your experience been like here at the college?
Oh my God. I personally have had a wonderful experience at Laredo College. We've gone through a lot of changes. I've met a lot of people, both professionals and a lot of students. I'm still in, you see, for about 20 years, I've been the lead advisor for the student organization called TACHE, and it's a state affiliate. TACHE is an acronym that stands for Texas Association of Chicanos in Higher Education, right? So I did that for about 20 years. Within those 20 years, I also did 16 years of being a co-advisor with my partner, Laura Ramirez Cruz, who's now the dean.
Right.
She and I did the Honor Society, Phi Theta Kappa. So we did a lot of traveling to that. And all those students that we traveled to all these different conferences throughout the years, I would say like at least 90% of them, I'm still in contact with them thanks to social media.
Wow.
And many of them are still in Laredo or South Texas or in Texas.
Yeah. If you could define today's Laredo College student, how would you do it?
The moment the smartphone kicked in, that's when I noticed a huge difference. Students before the iPhone were more patient. They had no problems reading a lengthy piece of literature, for example, as opposed to the post-iPhone and even post-COVID student.
Yeah.
I mostly focus on short stories.
Yeah.
Really short video clips, YouTube, things like that. I compile them and create a thematic unit.
Well, you have to.
You have to.
And you mentioned that they're less patient, and I think our society in general is less patient.
Even I find myself being guilty of that, and I'm old school.
I agree. We just want everything, and we want it now, and we want it fast. And since it's been able to do that for us, we continue to want it more. So that definitely changes you as a professor as far as technique and things like that. I'm guessing.
Yes.
What do you still enjoy teaching?
I love teaching,
even though you have to do it online.
I do notice. Like this year, I'm started noticing my energy level not quite the same the previous 20-some years or almost 30 years. But the passion, not the same passion I had in music, but this version of passion, it's still there. I still love connecting to students, helping my colleagues as much as I can. So,
There you go.
You go. That works.
How many more years do you think you want to do this?
Good question. I'm thinking in about 2 or 3 years, I'll start thinking about it.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm still having fun. It's still a passion.
Somebody sees Rene Montemayor on their schedule. What do you want them to think?
You're going to do a lot of learning while having fun.
Nice. I was going to say, just by this conversation, I could tell one of the classes with you would be a lot of fun. So.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Montemayor, for your time.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure sitting here and talking to you. And I know there's a lot more we can talk about, but
we need hours.
Yeah, exactly. There's a different tangents we can go off on. But thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that.